we're not doing an anthem again today because the choir is taking a sabbatical for the summer. So we're going to go straight into the message. And I kind of like what we just read in our responsive reading, because it says here, it says, God set up his binding law for Jacob, an eternal covenant for Israel, promising, I hereby give you the land of Canaan as your allotted inheritance. And today we're going to be talking something about Canaan. So it kind of leads into this. But let me ask you this question. Have you known someone who had to follow somebody else and fill some very big shoes? Did you have to follow after somebody who made large tracts in the lands? I mean, did you know someone that you had to follow after who did some awesome, almost impossible things, and now you are faced with some enormous challenges that seem overwhelming, and you just don't know if you can step up into the shadows of those who came before you? Have you ever been in that situation, or you know somebody who's been in that situation? Now, there are some great men and women listed in the Bible, aren't there? Who are considered, and these men and women are considered heroes of the faith. And I would say that they're kind of difficult acts to follow. I mean, how would you like to follow Adam? Now, Adam had the chore of naming every animal in creation. And we can understand where he comes from some of the names, like fly. Fly got the name fly because he does what? Fly. Now, why he didn't name frogs hop, I don't know. Why they got the name of frog, I have a clue. But he did it. But then after that, he and Eve messed up and they got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. But they had to carve out their existence in a harsh, cruel world. And they did just that. And they thrived. Now, what about following Noah? Now, you think about it. Noah had to build an ark in the middle of a desert. Now, if you're told to build a boat in the middle of the desert, you're going to go, what? But he had to build this ark, this huge, huge ark in the middle of the desert, amidst all the jeers and the laughter of his friends and his families. But he did just that. And he saved the human race, because he had the task of restarting the human race with just his family. What about King David? How would you like to follow his act? Or Solomon? Or Gideon? Those are some tough acts to follow, aren't they? That's tough. Now you think about Joshua. Joshua started out as a Hebrew slave in Egypt. I mean, he was the lowest of the lowest. But he then rose to become second under Moses as Moses led the Israelites out of Egyptian slavery to freedom. Now, when you're following Moses in those shoes, you got to think about who Moses was. Moses first was a former Egyptian prince by adoption. He was an Egyptian prince. But Moses, under God's direction, led the people through the parted waters of the Red Sea. That's pretty amazing. Okay. Then he led the people to Mount Sinai, where he received the Ten Commandments directly from God. And then Moses led the people for 40 years through the wilderness to the land of Canaan. And now it's time now Moses has passed away, and Joshua has some very big shoes to fill, doesn't he? But God had complete confidence in him. You know, it says he has confidence because God chose him to succeed Moses. Turn with me to Joshua chapter 1. Joshua chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then you and all the people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land that I am about to give them, to the Israelites. Now God is speaking directly to Joshua here, and he's giving him now the mission of leading the Israelites, or leading the Hebrew nation into the land of Canaan. He was replacing Moses, and he had some huge challenges facing him. Not only did he have some big shoes to fill, he now faced those big challenges. The first challenge was the River Jordan. It was standing right there. Now, they had to cross the river to get into Canaan, didn't they? Why was it so tough to cross the Jordan River? Well, the Jordan River was at flood stage. Joshua 3:15 tells us that. It says, now the Jordan is at flood stage all during the harvest. That's what it says. Now, a flooded river is just not something you want to try to cross on foot. You just don't want to try to do it. Remember after Hurricane Matthew, what the Cape Fear River was like? How many of you would like to try to cross that on foot? I went over the Grove Street Bridge when the river was crested, and I looked out, and it was this far from underneath one of the trestlets. That far. That's deep, considering that Cape Fear River is normally way down here. That scared me. I'm not about to try to cross that on foot. I'm not even going to try to cross it in a boat. We have a modern technology today, but even then, you don't want to try to cross a flooded river. But with God, anything is possible. And if you continue reading in chapter 3, you're going to see that when the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant, that when they got up to the Jordan River and their feet just touched the edge of the river, something amazing happened. The river stopped flowing, and it just piled up. It stopped. It says it stopped flowing, and it piled up from upstream. Now, can you imagine? This water just piles up. Whoa! And the water that was going downstream, it says it dried up, and it allowed the people to cross. Now, I'm saying one side is dry, and on the other side, you've got this big wall of water just standing there. That had to be an awesome sight. I wonder where something like this has happened before. Any guesses? How about the Red Sea? This reminded them, what a tremendous reminder this was for the people of the power of God and of the confidence that God had in Joshua. It's a confirmation of Joshua's authority under God. And they need the power of God. They need that miracle-working power because he still had a lot of challenges to overcome. So if you will, turn with me to Joshua chapter 6. We're going to take a look at one of those challenges. We're going to read verses 1 and 2. Joshua 6, 1 and 2, it says, "Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites." These guys were afraid of the Israelites. So they barred the gates. No one went out and no one came in. And then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and all its fighting men." I can just see Joshua standing there scratching his head with a fun look on his face going, "You've got to be kidding me." Jericho was the strongest fortress city in all of Canaan, and it was strategically placed, in the crossroads from the Transjordan area into Judah, the highlands of Judah. It was just this tremendously fortified city. Biblical archaeologist Bryant Wood describes the walls, just the walls of Jericho like this. The Mount or Tell of Jericho was surrounded by a great earthen rampart or embankment with a stone retaining wall at its base. The retaining wall was some 12 to 15 feet high. So that first wall was 12 to 15 feet high. That's a pretty substantial wall. All right. Then at the crest, on top of that was a mud brick wall 6 feet thick and about 20 to 26 feet high. So then you have 12 feet, now you got about 26 feet high. That's going up there. All right. At the crest of the embankment was a similar mud brick wall whose base was roughly 46 feet above ground level outside the retaining wall. So this wall on top of that, the bottom of it was 46 feet high. Just the bottom of it. And it went up from there. So you got this tremendous wall. It says, this is what loomed high above the Israelites as they marched around the city each day for 7 days. Humanly speaking, it was impossible for the Israelites to penetrate the impregnable, I can't get the word out today, bastion of Jericho. Can you imagine God saying, "I've delivered Jericho into your hands, and its king and all its armies," and Joshua went, "What?" I mean, what options did they have to overtake this? Because you had an impregnable wall surrounding Jericho. And inside of that wall was not just an army, but an army of strong, battle-tested soldiers. They were waiting. So what options were there for the Israelites to overtake the city? Well, from a human standpoint, they did have several options. They could build ladders and try to scale the walls. I don't think that would have worked too well, especially if you've got archers at the top. Now they could build battering rams, and they could try to batter down the gates. Or they could have tunneled at night under the walls. I think that would have been a pretty hard option, trying to tunnel under something that large and that thick. Or they could just lay siege and try to starve them out. But from all accounts in Jericho, who had its own water source, I'm sure they had their own food supplies and stuff, and the technology that was available to the Israelites, I think any of these options would have been extreme long shots at best. But faith offered another alternative, just like it does in salvation. Joshua was a man of faith, and he trusted in God. So if you look back at chapter 5 of Jericho, chapter 5, verses 13 through 15, we read these words about his faith. It says, "Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. And Joshua went up to him and said, 'Are you for us? Are you for our enemies?' 'Neither,' he replied, 'but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come.' And then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked, 'What message does my Lord have for his servant?' The commander of the Lord's army replied, 'Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy.' And Joshua did so." Joshua was visited by the angel of God, but not just any angel. He was visited by the commander of God's army. Now, that had to be a humbling experience. I mean, just think about that. Totally amazing. You're visited by the general, the general of God's army. And to be brought a message by him, by the commander of God's army, that had to be just overwhelming. But what was that promise that God gave him through this commander? What was that promise? You see the promise in chapter 2 and verse 6, or in chapter 6, verse 2, where it says, "I have delivered Jericho into your hands." Now, I can tell you this, when God makes a promise, do you think he's going to renege on it? Do you think God's going to? God keeps his promise. He's going to follow through. And with this promise, Joshua knew that he would be victorious even in the face of the impossible. Because when God makes that, he knew when God makes a promise that God was faithful and just would keep that promise. And Joshua was presented with an opportunity to step out in faith. Now he's got that opportunity to step out in faith and do what God says. And when an opportunity of faith is presented, what does it take? It takes obedience to be able to do that. It takes an obedience to step out in faith. Okay, if you read verses 3 through 14, you're going to see one of the strangest battle plans that was ever devised. All right, and to follow this course of action, you either had to be lunacy at its best, or it had to be a true act of faith. Because you're going to try to take a fortified city with these instructions. Okay, how are we going to do that? But I'm going to go with that was a true act of faith on Joshua's part, to be obedient to God. Because any military leader who's facing an obstacle like the walls and the fortification of Jericho will call this plan of attack lunacy. I mean, lunacy. Well, listen to what God told Joshua. You'll see what I'm saying. In verses 3 and 5, God tells Joshua to have everyone in his army to march around the city one time for 6 days. Once a day for 6 days to march around the city. And on the seventh day, he's to march around the city 7 times with all his army, with the Ark of the Covenant in the lead, and the priests behind that blaring on their trumpet, blowing as hard as they can. And then after the 7th circuit around the city on that 7th day, the priests were to give a loud blast on their trumpets, and then everybody in the army is to yell at the top of their lungs. Now, doesn't that sound like great military strategy? Now, I can just see guys like General Douglas MacArthur or General Patton going with this type of plan. Douglas MacArthur going, "We're going to sink the Japanese Navy with blowing our trumpets." You think he could do that? Or George Patton going, "We're going to defeat Rommel's tank divisions by driving in circles surrounding them," and then shouting. I don't think that would quite work with Rommel. But that's sound military strategy. But you think about what happens when you have faith in God. Our salvation comes through faith. When we come to God and his Son, Jesus Christ, in faith, what happens? God grants our salvation to us freely. Because in Ephesians 2:8 it says, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith." God grants us salvation through our faith and our belief in his Son, Jesus Christ. Now, another thing that faith brings is an answer to prayer. In James 1, 6, 8, it says that we have to pray and we have to believe that God is going to answer our prayers. Because when we have to have faith, because when we pray in faith, believing that God will answer, He will. But when we allow doubts to creep in, then we allow the things of this world to creep into our prayers, then our fears, and then we're going to be driven around. We're going to be tossed around like a boat on the water and then driven under, like a boat in the storm. When we allow doubts, but we have to believe and have to have faith that God's going to answer. That's what it says in James 1, 6 and 8. But faith requires obedience. When you have faith, it requires obedience. In 2 Kings chapter 5, it tells us the commander of an army. And he was a great general. But he had one problem. He had leprosy. And then a captured Israelite servant girl told him, says, if you go see a prophet in Samaria, he will be able to cure you. And so the commander, he goes off to Samaria and he finds this prophet. And the prophet tells him, what you need to do is go to the Jordan River and bathe yourself 7 times. Bathe yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Now the commander begins to balk at this, thinking it's just too simple. It's just too simple. And besides, the waters of the rivers in Damascus are much cleaner than the Jordan River. But he's obedient, and he washes 7 times in the Jordan River, and he's healed of leprosy. A simple cure, but it took obedience and faith for it to happen. It takes faith to do something that would ordinarily seem to be ludicrous. Now, thinking wash water become fine wine. But that's just what happened when Jesus attended a wedding in Cana. During the wedding feast, remember what happened? They ran out of wine. Now, they're all a little tipsy by this time, but Jesus' mother tells the servers, listen to what Jesus has to say and do what he says. So he tells the servers, get these 6 large jars, these big jugs. I want you to fill them up with the wash water. Water that is normally used for ceremonial washing of the feet. I want you to fill up these jugs with wash water. And then I want you to take a dipper of it out and go serve it to your master and have him sample it. Now, the servants had to have faith in this, because for them to serve wash water to their master might be the kiss of death. But they were obedient in faith, and they took the wash water to their master, and you know what the rest of the story is. It wasn't wash water, was it? It was the most choice wine ever. They even remarked, why did you save the best wine till last? Because normally they served it up for them. To be obedient, even in the face of the impossible, is not something that most of us are willing to try. We live in a natural world where most people only believe in what they can see and what they can touch, or what can be scientifically proven. Most people don't even understand the supernatural power that it takes to have obedient faith. They don't understand how God can work miracles to those who have total trust in Him. But God can, and He does work miracles for those who have obedient faith. Now you think about those strange instructions that God gave Joshua. Think about how they sounded to him. You're facing this giant city with these huge fortified walls that, some historians say you could actually have chariot races on top of. Okay? I want you to march around these one time each day for 6 days, and on the 7 times on the 7th day, blaring the trumpets, and the trumpets blaring, and the Ark of the Covenant to lead. Then on the 7th circuit, I want everybody to shout as loud as they can. That would be like telling me to shout at the Rock of Gibraltar and expect it to crumble into rubble. But that's exactly what happened in Jericho. When Joshua followed God's command in obedient faith, the walls of Jericho came tumbling down, and the Israelite army was victorious. They obeyed in faith. Victory comes in God's time, and victory comes in God's way. Now, the question I want you to think about this morning is, what is the greatest obstacle that you are facing right now? Maybe it has something to do with your job. Maybe it's family related. Perhaps it's your health or the health of a loved one. Maybe it's the stress of stress. Maybe you have stress in your job, or everything else going on in your life just weighing down. Stress can cause a lot of damage. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one. But whatever your obstacle is, expect to overcome it through the power of Christ. Philippians 4:13 says that I can do all things through Him who gives me strength. And if Jesus can win the greatest victory at the cross of Calvary, if Jesus can overcome the power of death and His resurrection from the grave, then you need to trust and have faith in Him to be able to bring you victory in whatever battle, in whatever obstacle, in whatever hardship or whatever sorrow is in your life right now. And when you ask the question, how can I? The answer should be, I cannot. But through Christ, all things are possible. Is your faith in yourself, or is your faith in the things of this world? Is your faith in the God of creation and in His Son, Jesus Christ? Or is your faith in the things around you? You've got to have faith in Christ, because Christ is the glue that holds everything together. In Colossians 1:17 it says, He is before all things, and in Him all things are held together. Are you letting Christ hold you together right now when everything else is falling apart around you? Are you letting Christ hold you together? Do you trust Christ? What walls do you have to overcome? What things in your life do you have in your life right now that needs to be torn down? What is holding you back from following where God is leading you right now? What's holding you back? Because you need to give it to Jesus. Because Jesus will never fail you. Jesus will never, ever leave you. You pray with me? Heavenly Father, we come before you, giving you the glory. We all have walls. We have walls like Jericho in our lives. Walls that separate us. It can separate us from our family, it can separate us from our jobs, separate us from our friendships, but most of all, Father, these walls can separate us from you. They can hold us back from accomplishing your will in our lives, Father. Father, we give it to you. We give our walls to you in faith and ask you to tear them down. We ask you to give us the strength and the faith to overcome and to face whatever challenges are in front of us, knowing that they cannot defeat us if you are with us. Father, again, we thank you. We thank you for the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ, who gave Himself freely as a sacrifice so that we could boldly approach your throne, that we could be called your children, Father. Father, we ask for your strength. We ask for your direction. We ask for your love, Father, in our lives. Father, we ask you to help us build our faith in you. We ask you to help us to rely totally on you and your Son, Jesus. We ask for the guidance of your Spirit as we walk through this life. We thank you for all this in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen. You'll find our hymn of faith, Because You Are My All in All. It's hymn number